There are Honda engines that run so smoothly past 250,000 miles that owners forget what major repairs even feel like. And then there are Honda engines that start burning oil, rattling on cold starts, or losing power long before they should. Most of the time, the difference is not bad luck. It is not even the engine itself. It is a handful of habits that feel completely normal to the average owner, but quietly add wear every single week. If you own a Honda, you probably bought it for one reason above all others: reliability. That reputation did not come from nowhere. Honda built its name on engines that could take abuse, handle high mileage, and keep running long after a lot of other vehicles would have been traded in, scrapped, or parked behind a shop waiting for one repair too many. But that reputation can create a dangerous kind of confidence, because a lot of Honda owners start to believe the car will survive anything. Skip a fluid change here, ignore a small warning sign there, follow the longest possible service interval because the manual says you can, drive it hard when it's cold, put off a minor repair because it's still running fine. None of these decisions feels dramatic in the moment. That's why they're so expensive later. The hard truth is this: Honda engines are durable, but they are not magic. And some of the most damaging things owners do are the same things they think are completely harmless. Today, we're going through 5 normal Honda owner habits that quietly kill engines early. Not all at once, not with one dramatic failure, but slowly, over months and years, until the car that should have gone 250,000 miles starts acting old at 120,000. And the first one is probably the most common of all. Number 1. Stretching oil changes because the engine still sounds fine. This is where a lot of long-term engine problems begin. Honda owners hear that modern synthetic oil lasts longer, and that part is true. They hear that maintenance minder systems are smart, and that is often true too. Then they combine those two ideas into one dangerous assumption: if the car is still running smoothly, the oil must still be doing its job. That is not how engine wear works. Oil does not usually fail in some dramatic, visible way. It degrades gradually. Additives get used up, contaminants build up, fuel dilution, heat cycles, moisture, and combustion byproducts slowly reduce its ability to protect the moving parts that matter most. By the time the engine actually sounds different, the wear has already been happening for a long time. This is especially important on Honda engines that are known to be sensitive to oil condition over the long run. Direct injected turbo engines, for example, can deal with fuel contamination in the oil that makes short trip driving even harder on the engine than many owners realize. And even naturally aspirated Honda engines that are generally very durable still rely on clean oil to protect timing components, camshafts, piston rings, and variable valve timing systems. A lot of owners see the factory interval as the best case ownership plan. In reality, if your goal is maximum engine life, the better question is not how long can I wait? It is what keeps this engine healthiest over 10 or 15 years. For many owners, especially those who do short trips, city driving, heavy traffic, hot climates, or frequent cold starts, shorter oil intervals are cheap insurance. Many experienced owners and independent mechanics still prefer conservative oil change intervals rather than pushing to the maximum limit every time. And this is where people get caught, because a stretched oil interval does not usually destroy an engine right away. It just helps create the kind of slow wear that shows up later as oil consumption, noisy startup, timing system wear, or sludge-related issues. It feels normal, it feels harmless, but over time, it can age a Honda engine far faster than the owner realizes. And if that's what happens when the engine is fully lubricated, the next habit is even worse, because it happens during the exact time your engine is least protected. Number 2. Driving hard in the first few minutes after a cold start. A lot of people think they're treating the car gently just because they're not flooring it. But if you start your Honda, put it in gear immediately, and then ask for quick acceleration while the engine is still cold, you are creating wear in the part of the drive cycle that matters most. Cold starts are where a huge amount of engine wear happens. When the engine has been sitting, oil drains back down into the pan. Even when some surfaces still have a protective film, the system is not at full operating condition yet. The oil is thicker, clearances are not fully stabilized, fuel delivery is richer, and key components are working before ideal lubrication and temperature conditions are reached. Honda engines are engineered well, but they still obey physics. If you rev high, accelerate hard, or load the engine heavily in the first few minutes, you increase stress during the exact period when the oil has not fully reached its best operating behavior. Over time, that repeated cold load habit can contribute to wear on cylinder walls, valve train parts, bearings, and timing components. This is especially important for drivers who make lots of short trips. If most of your driving is 10 minutes or less, your engine spends a huge portion of its life either warming up or cooling down. That means your ownership style may be harsher than your mileage suggests. The better habit is simple. Let the engine settle briefly, then drive gently until temperatures come up. You don't need to idle forever in the driveway. In fact, excessive idling is its own wasteful habit, but smooth, light driving in the first few minutes gives the engine a much better chance to stabilize before you demand full performance from it. A lot of Honda owners believe engine damage only comes from abuse, racing, or total neglect, but repeated mild aggression when the engine is cold can quietly chip away at long-term reliability. And speaking of things owners ignore because the engine still feels okay, this next habit is one of the biggest reasons small problems become major repair bills.
Number 3. Ignoring small coolant or temperature system issues. This is one of the most expensive mistakes because it often starts with something so minor that the owner convinces themselves it can wait. Maybe the coolant level drops a little between services. Maybe the temperature gauge stays normal, but the heater acts slightly inconsistent. Maybe there is a faint sweet smell once in a while, or a small crusty residue near a hose connection, radiator seam, or water pump area. The car still drives fine, so it gets pushed to next month. Then next month becomes next season. That delay is where trouble begins. Honda engines, like all modern aluminum engines, do not tolerate overheating well. It does not take repeated severe overheating to create expensive damage. One bad overheat event can be enough to turn a manageable cooling system repair into a cylinder head problem, a head gasket issue, or warped components that cost far more than the original leak ever would have. The reason this habit is so dangerous is that cooling system problems often give soft warnings before they become obvious failures. Owners tend to wait for a dashboard warning light or a dramatic temperature spike, but by the time that happens, your margin for error is gone. A weak thermostat, aging radiator cap, slow water pump seep, tired hose, or neglected coolant can all contribute to bigger trouble over time. And because Hondas are so often trusted to just run, owners sometimes miss the urgency of these early signs. If you want long engine life, treat every coolant irregularity like it matters, because it does. Check levels, watch for smells, look for residue, pay attention to heater performance. If the engine ever begins running warmer than usual, investigate early and always use the correct coolant specification for your exact model. This is not about paranoia. It is about understanding that some of the most expensive engine repairs start as small cooling system issues that owners normalized for too long. And there is another fluid-related habit that feels even more harmless because it does not involve a warning light, a leak, or a visible symptom at all. Number 4. Constantly making short trips and assuming mileage tells the whole story. One of the biggest myths in car ownership is that low mileage automatically means low wear. It sounds logical. A Honda with 60,000 miles should be healthier than one with 120,000, right? Sometimes yes, but not always, because not all miles are equal. A Honda that spends most of its life doing short trips across town, cold starts in winter, school runs, grocery runs, stop-and-go traffic, and long periods of sitting between brief drives can accumulate wear in a very different way than a Honda that racks up highway miles consistently. Short trip use is rough on engines. The oil may not get hot enough long enough to burn off moisture and contaminants efficiently. The battery and charging system may be under more stress. Carbon deposits can build more easily. Fuel dilution can become more of an issue in certain engine designs. And the engine may spend a disproportionate amount of its life in warm-up mode rather than stable operating condition. That means the owner who proudly says, "I barely drive it," may actually be giving the engine a harder life than they realize. This is especially important for Honda owners who rely only on mileage as a maintenance guide. Time matters too. Driving pattern matters too. Climate matters too. If the car mostly does short trip duty, severe service thinking is usually smarter than best-case interval thinking. A lot of engines that seem to age early are not victims of one terrible mistake. They're victims of years of easy use that was not actually easy at all. So if your Honda mostly sees short trip
trip duty, you should think more aggressively about oil service, battery health, intake cleanliness, and paying attention to how the engine sounds and feels over time, because the next habit often shows up in exactly those cars. The owner hears or feels something slightly off, but waits because the car is still drivable. Number 5. Postponing small repairs because it's a Honda. This might be the most expensive mindset on the entire list. The phrase sounds harmless, even affectionate. It's a Honda. It'll be fine. And to be fair, that belief exists for a reason. Hondas often do keep running with minor issues longer than some other vehicles, but that strength can lead owners into a bad pattern. They start using drivability as the only test of urgency. If it still starts, still moves, and still gets them to work, they convince themselves the problem is not serious yet. That is how a cheap fix turns into a costly chain reaction. A tired ignition component can become a misfire issue that damages other parts. A small valve cover leak can turn into oil contamination on surrounding components. A noisy pulley or belt tensioner can fail more dramatically later. A minor vacuum leak or sensor issue can affect fuel trim, drivability, and efficiency long before the owner decides it is worth checking. Even something as simple as an overdue spark plug service can place extra stress on ignition components and reduce combustion quality over time. What separates high-mileage Honda owners from average owners is often not luck, it is response time. The best long-term owners do not wait for a problem to become undeniable. They deal with it while it is still small, still isolated, and still relatively cheap. That approach matters because engines rarely fail in isolation. Problems spread. Heat affects nearby parts. Leaks contaminate nearby systems. Misfires stress the catalytic converter. Weak cooling components increase engine stress. Poor maintenance in one area quietly shortens life in another. And that's why "it's still running fine" can be one of the most expensive sentences in Honda ownership. If this video is helping you, subscribe and share it with someone who owns a Honda and plans to keep it for the long haul, because most engines do not die early from one dramatic disaster. They get worn down by habits that owners repeat for years without thinking twice. Now, here's the part that really matters. None of these habits sounds extreme. That's exactly why they're so common. Stretching oil changes because the engine sounds okay, loading the engine too quickly when cold, ignoring small coolant issues because the gauge still looks normal, assuming low mileage means easy use, delaying minor repairs because the car is a Honda and still seems drivable. Every one of those habits feels reasonable in the moment, but put them together over 5, 8, or 10 years, and they can make a reliable engine age much faster than it should. On the other hand, owners who get huge life out of Hondas usually do the opposite. They stay conservative with oil service. They drive gently when cold. They treat cooling system changes seriously. They understand short trip driving is harder than it looks, and they fix little problems before they become expensive ones. That's the real difference between a Honda that feels tired at 120,000 miles and one that still feels strong deep into high-mileage ownership. It's usually not some magic additive. It's not some hidden reset button. And it's not luck. It's habits. Smart, boring, consistent habits. And those habits are what give reliable cars the chance to actually live up to their reputation. One final point before we wrap up. Always check your owner's manual and verify maintenance needs for your exact engine and model year. Honda has built a wide range of engines over the years, and what applies broadly may still vary in the details. The goal is not to panic over every sound or fluid level. The goal is to stop normalizing the small patterns that quietly wear an engine down, because once those signs become obvious, the cheap stage is usually over. So if you want your Honda to stay smooth, efficient, and dependable for as long as possible, stop measuring engine health by whether it still runs today. Start measuring it by the habits that determine how it will run years from now. And if you want to see the maintenance mistakes Toyota owners make that create the exact same kind of long-term wear, that's the next video you should watch, because some of the most expensive ownership problems start with routines drivers think are completely normal.